Hello and welcome to Psychgeist, where we talk about the psychology of the era, the science of games. I am your host, Dr. Rachel Kowert, and on today's episode of Research Review, we're going to be looking at a 2021 paper entitled Aggressive Video Games Are Not a Risk Factor for Mental Health Problems in Youth, a Longitudinal Study. The article begins by noting that recent pre-registered studies, go back to my video on open science, and analyses have suggested that the link between aggressive video games and aggression-related outcomes may have been exaggerated in previous literature. Despite this, concerns about aggressive or violent behavior remain. #moral panic. Although the impact of aggressive games on aggressive behaviors has been the subject of about a dozen pre-registered studies and hundreds of non-pre-registered studies, the potential impact of aggressive games on players' mental health symptoms has not been the subject of pre-registered analyses. In the current study, a sample of more than 3,000 youth from Singapore were examined by using pre-registered analyses to determine whether early exposure to aggressive games was predictive of mental health outcomes. From this sample, 72% of them reported male gender, and the sample's mean age at the first measurement at time 1 was 11. The predictor here was aggressive video games. The current study specifically adopted a standardized approach to addressing aggressive video games, whereby participants rated 3 video games they currently played and their frequency of play. ESRB, Entertainment Software Ratings Board, ratings for each of the games was used to estimate their violent content. A composite score was then averaged from the 3 games, and the measure provided an estimate of time spent playing, quote, aggressive video games. As noted by the researchers, the employment of a standardized assessment for aggressive gameplay can reduce spuriously high effect sizes due to researcher degrees of freedom, resulting in effect sizes that are more approximate for population. Then a range of mental health symptoms were assessed. Somatic complaints, physical symptoms due to stress were assessed using a 10-item scale relating to issues of back pain, headaches, etc. Participants were asked how often in the last month they had experienced these symptoms. Attention deficit hyperactivity symptoms were measured with an 18-item scale, and they asked about fidgeting, blurting out, and distractibility. Depression was assessed using the Asian American Depression Scores, 15 items. Questions were asked about hopelessness, thoughts about dying, and persistent sadness. Anxiety was assessed with a 20-item scale, asking about worrying, fears, and nervousness. Social phobia was assessed with a 17-item scale, talking about engaging socially in public or fear of interacting with others. There are also 2 control measures: family environment and impulse control. Family environment was measured as a control variable, given that family environment can influence mental health. This was done using a 6-item scale and asked whether the youth felt it was pleasant living at home, whether they felt accepted, or whether there were too many arguments. Impulse control was measured with a 14-item scale, looking at impulsiveness, impulsive behaviors, and excitability. This was included as a control given the relationship between impulsivity and some mental health outcomes, such as ADHD. All of the scales showed high internal validity. Results. The most consistent predictor of later mental health symptoms were earlier mental health symptoms. Neither time spent playing games nor aggressive video game use significantly predicted later mental health symptoms. Early problems with impulse control predicted later ADHD, and early issues with family and environment predicted later depression. So what's the takeaway here? As discussed by the researchers, quote, current results fit with increasing data to suggest the impact of aggressive video games is less than had been previously thought. Indeed, using such games may be typical for normal adolescent development. This also suggests that society's fascination with the impact of video games may be particularly well conceptualized via moral panic theory, wherein presumed effects are exaggerated and stakeholders incentivized to promote the idea of such impacts. Evidence suggests that older adults tend to be the most concerned about the impact of games, consistent with moral panic theory. They continue. The results also suggest that clinically, a focus on aggressive video games is unlikely to be productive in the understanding of the development of youth mental health issues, including ADHD. This does not mean that other gaming issues, such as pathological gaming, might not be involved in mental health. However, this does suggest caution in regards to how professional guilds, such as the APA, the American Psychological Association, discuss the impact of games on mental health. Current results suggest that professional guilds may wish to revise their public statements on games to be more cautious in asserting either correlational or causal links. My thoughts. Good study. First of all, having it be pre-registered longitudinal with a large sample makes this a bit of a diamond in the rough. Also, the sample age is notable because younger children or youths, as they described here, are thought to have the most time to consume video games and be the most affected by media messages. They're also the hardest to recruit because of the hoops you usually have to go through to get ethical approval. So seeing such a large, young sample really is notable. I like that they focus on primary outcomes associated with video game play, the mental health outcomes, ADHD, social phobia, anxiety, depression. That's great that they use specific measures for each of these outcomes. I think it's a wonderful start in understanding the impact on mental health, specifically aggressive games, which tends to be the most concerning genre from scholars and parents alike. If you like this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe. And until next time, be excellent to each other and always cite your sources.